Hello Reddit readers, today we have stories from parents about their children on the timeline. I will not detain you anymore. Like and subscribe to the channel of pleasant viewing. Story 1 from user Smedley89. So I have one grown child, I'm 1, 2, and 1. I am not my wife, and I divorced when they were young. My ex was in a relationship with a child abuser, not hyperbole. He went to prison when my kids were in their late teens. My ex is very narcissistic. She and her new hubby had no problems with alimentation between me and them. My weekend to pick them up. Whoops, they had a road trip. I get them over the summer. Sure hell, take some extra time. No rush plans for the summer while the kids are with me, then threatening to call the feds if I don't have them back immediately. So that was their mom's side of things. I wound up in a relationship with another toxic woman. She would be good to the kids in front of me and shit when my back was turned. When I finally saw what she was doing, we split. Still, damage was done during the initial divorce. I was in a bad place. My kids were my world, and they were just gone. Broke me, and made me not the best father to be around. I wasn't there even when I was present. My ex decided she was moving, and the kids couldn't come with her. I loved in another state. By then I had 2 days to find a truck and go get them. During this time, the child abuse allegations came out about their stepdad. Their mom made it all about her. While my relationship with my kids improved after leaving Crazy Woman 2, it never fully recovered my oldest, and I are closer, and I appreciate it. He has no contact with either his sister and his mother, my youngest, and I are at peace. We aren't as close as I would like, which is a shame, but I understand there's no way to make up for not being there. I'm now married to a lovely woman. The kids grown love her. Her daughter considers my son her brother. Though he was grown by the time this dynamic started, I won't say it was all the doing of my ex. I wasn't present. Life takes you places you don't want to go, like it or not. So now I just take those relationships as they come and try not to push myself too hard into their lives. Story 2 from user Telecom Teardown. I'm not going to get into detailed specifics, but my wife's son refuses contact with us. He was a very troubled kid. The entirety of his childhood. We found out way too late that his father had been sexually abusing him since he was very young. There were signs, and my wife was aware of some physical abuse. But as she was being abused as well, she never saw the full extent of it. The father was very good at hiding the sexual abuse, and any questioning of situations or behavior was met with violence. She got away, and eventually we were married. When her son was just starting his teens, he was in therapy, but issues continued: stealing, lying, vandalism, violent outburst, etc. And it became worse when his father was murdered in a drug incident. Everything finally came to a head when he was caught showing my daughter 8. At the time he was 15, porn and masturbating in front of her. We removed him from our home, and with the help of his therapist, had him placed in a home for kids with issues like his. His problems still continued until he was removed from that home to an institution after a sexual incident that involved another resident. He spent months in that facility, and when it came time for him to be released, we arranged for him to live with some of my family that could provide a safe space for him to continue his treatment and finish high school. This was when he finally came forward with the sexual abuse he had endured under his father. It practically broke my wife, and she still blames herself for not seeing it and not getting him out sooner. Things seemed to be going well for him, and we started to include him in functions with the rest of the family. My daughter doesn't remember the incident, but has received counseling regardless. Finally, he graduates high school, and his very next move is to pack up his stuff and move out of my family's house where he had been living, and into some family of his late father's. Over the course of the next few months, he gets more and more distant stops. Therapy stops calling or texting, and stops responding to our calls and texts. He changed his number, didn't reach out to his mother on her birthday or Mother's Day, and pretty much went no contact. Then a last-ditch effort by us was to just show up where he was living and try to connect with him. He and my wife spent hours crying and talking, and we thought things could move forward. But we were wrong, as he gave my wife a fake number and blocked her on any social media. He had, over the past few years, I found his contact info, usually emails attached to socials, and reached out to him, begging him to just text his mother and let her know he was okay. And I would get an unhinged reply that I was invading his space and that he would decide when the time was right to contact her. My wife has felt defeated, but over time she has resolved herself to this new normal. With her son a couple of months ago, he sent her a long FB message, basically renouncing everything he had admitted about his father, as well as abuses he had perpetuated that we knew about, blaming my wife for her failed marriage with his abusive father, and then marriage to me, a person he evidently hates, making his father a martyr that was murdered in cold blood, and essentially telling her that until she begs his forgiveness for all the wrongs she caused him and divorces me, he will never talk to her again and hope she rots in hell. She was very hurt, of course, but she didn't respond. He obviously still needs loads of mental help, but we don't have the strength to go through all of that again, nor put our other children through all of that again. He's an adult now, and he's going to have to figure it out on his own. We'll still be here for him when he gets it together and comes around. Such is life. Story 3 from user Radrays2kx. My father has been married and divorced now 5 times. This most recent time was a 20-year marriage one day. A couple months ago, he called me and told me he had been praying for the answer to why all these women have left him, and Jesus led him to a website that opened his eyes. It was a website about being in a relationship with a narcissist. He printed out the entire website, came over to my house and read it to me from top to bottom, and explained that this was the answer he was looking for. His most recent ex fit the bill. He said finally, after about an hour of his rambling, I looked him dead in the face and said, Jesus led you to the right website. But you didn't understand the answer? Perplexed, he looked at me and said, What do you mean, Dad? This isn't easy for me to tell you, but you're a narcissist. He was in complete disbelief, as narcissists often are when confronted with their own faults. No, I'm not a narcissist. How would you know? Because I've seen therapists for over 4 years over my own relationships and mental issues. Narcissism can be hereditary. Guess where I got it from? No, you put women through these things, that's horrible. You're a horrible person. Not to that extent, but yes. Especially in my younger untherapied years, you described younger me to the letter that can't be Radrays2kx. How could I be a narcissist? I'm a doctor, I've saved lives. More self-evident gloating. What about your mom? His second wife, arguably the one he misses the most, and regrets up on every single day. What does your mom think? Dad? My mother is the one that pointed out that you're a narcissist, and that at times, I act just like you. It's been months since he started therapy, he still doesn't get it. Probably a combination of being a narcissist, and also because his narcissistic tendencies are masking his ugly truth. When he talks to the therapist, irony is a bonus to any narcissists here that want to try to be better partners. 100 recommend deep diving into and practicing wholeheartedly. Gottman methodologies. 1000 made all the difference in my life. I'm a better spouse, better friend, better parent, better boss. Cannot recommend it enough. Story 4 from user FoxyFreckles 1989. My son is 15, and I haven't seen or spoken to him since he was 11. His dad and I had what I thought was a very amicable co-parenting agreement, but he used his relationship with the judge as a sheriff to manipulate that plan we were doing. Month on month off parenting before he started school. Slowly, his dad's month started becoming 5 weeks, then 6, then 7, and so on. Then he enrolled him in school, without talking to me. Even though we were supposed to go back to mediation to decide where he would go to school. Ultimately, the last time my son came to spend the summer with me, after I agreed to being the summer and winter vacation parent, he left after only a week because his dad promised to take him to Legoland. If he did, I actually temporarily moved back to my hometown over 9 hours from where I was living, and I am living again in an attempt to co-parent. Again, we went to mediation, and I agreed to having him every weekend, 15 weekends in a row. His dad came up with an excuse not to send him to me. I wasn't strong enough, nor did I have the resources to go back to court and fight him. I moved back to my home. I continued attempting to contact him weekly for a year, monthly for another couple of years, and then I gave up. I didn't want to drag him through the mud. I was only 18 when he was born, and his dad was 24. We had been dating for 2 years. He and his mother were incredibly abusive to me, and I was a child. I know that I should have fought harder, but I also try to be more understanding with myself these days. After going to therapy about all of this, I greatly hope that someday I'm given the opportunity to rebuild a relationship with him on his terms. I made a rule for myself to never speak poorly about his dad to him, and I never broke that rule. But if he asks me for the truth, I will give him my version of it. What makes all of this harder is that I am living with a fatal inheritable condition. Part of why it was so difficult for me to find the energy and funds to keep fighting his dad, and part of what had me mentally convinced my son was better off living with him anyway, and have a life expectancy of late 40s. When I am already 34, I finally convinced my son's paternal grandmother to get him tested after years of asking his dad to do it and getting nothing in response other than, "I don't believe you that you are sick," or "I researched your alleged condition, and our son has no symptoms." I am still waiting to hear about the results. I also found out recently that my son doesn't even live with his dad, but with his paternal grandma, and has for the entirety of the time since last being with me. He lived with me full-time until he was 4, when his dad suddenly wanted to split time. But every time he had him, our son was with his mom. It's a mess. And I am partly to blame. I just hope that I eventually get a chance to make it up to him, as much as something like this can be made up to a kid with an absent mother. My mother and my siblings do see my son a few times a year, and they say that he is well, adjusted, happy, healthy, and does ask about me and how I'm doing. He has my number and my address for whenever he decides he wants to reach out. Sometimes I think that I should reach out to him again, but every time I try, his dad comes up with a reason I can talk to him. I'm hoping that changes when he's 18. I can't help but wondering if he's been lied to all of these years and told that I want nothing to do with him and haven't reached out at all. And it's painful to think about him believing that I abandoned him and never looked back. My mom treads very lightly when she spends time with him, because she's afraid if she brings me up too much, they'll stop letting her see him as well. I don't think I'll ever get answers until I'm able to talk to him myself. I've never spoken about this online. I can't decide if it's more cathartic or terrifying, regardless reading. The comments has made me feel much less alone. All I know is my biggest regret in life. Truly. My only real regret is not fighting for him harder. Back then, I was so afraid of his dad, so hurt by the things he did to me, and said to me, and about me, that I truly felt incapable. I often hate myself for not being stronger for him. I never planned to place all the blame on his dad, given the chance to build a relationship with him again. I also never planned to play the martyr and act like I'm not at fault at this point, even though I am almost certain I would actually be granted custody. We still have 50-50, but I agreed to giving his dad residential when he started school. If I took it back to court, I respect the fact that he's in high school with an established life and circle of friends and extracurriculars, and he loves his grandma. I couldn't rip him away from all of that, for my own selfish needs and wants. Attempting to co-parent with his dad again, at this stage of his life, wouldn't make a lot of sense and wouldn't be safe for me. So we'll continue to wait and hope. My biggest fear is that the abuse that was once directed at me is now being directed at him. But I have nothing confirming that I wish I could apologize to my son. Of course, if you were to meet his dad and ask him where his son's mother is, he would tell you that I drove away when our son was 9 months old and never turned back. He would completely erase the first 4 years of my son's life, the years that I had full custody and never even heard from him, let alone got any help. He would erase the next several years as well when we successfully co-parented, and he slowly stole time, manipulated me, abused me, and used his position of power against me. He would tell you that his new wife, the stepmother my son is so afraid of, that he chooses to live with his grandma, stepped in when our son was young and filled my role. Even though she didn't meet my ex or my son until my son was almost 11, he would tell you that the postpartum depression I struggled with for just about a year after my son was born was actually a lifelong mental illness that made me incapable of parenting. He would also tell you that I was 18 when we met and 20 when we had our son. He would also tell you that I kidnapped our son and that's why he has custody. When in all reality, I took our son and moved out of state in those early years when his father was nowhere to be found, and it has absolutely nothing to do with our current custody. I'm so glad that there is so much proof to the contrary. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and write comments. See you later.